The oil lamp flickered across Jake Morrison's scarred face as he stood alone on the abandoned platform, his Colt revolver heavy in his trembling hand. 3 years since that night, the gunshot, the Apache boy falling, the mother's scream that still woke him gasping. He pressed the barrel against his temple. Then he heard it, soft weeping from the shadows. A young woman huddled in the corner, clutching a canvas bag, her dress torn and face bruised. Clara Whitmore looked up with terrified eyes as Jake lowered his gun. "The last train left an hour ago," he said quietly. "I know." Her voice cracked. "My uncle never came." Jake studied her trembling form. Every instinct screamed to walk away, to finish what he'd started. But something in her desperation mirrored his own brokenness. He grabbed his horse's reins. "Come on." Sometimes ghosts find each other in the dark. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Jake Morrison had been running from ghosts for 3 years. At 31, he looked a decade older. His face carved with sleepless nights and whiskey-soaked regrets. The marshal's badge he'd once worn with pride now lay buried beneath the floorboards of his cabin. A relic of the man he used to be. The night replayed endlessly in his mind. He'd been tracking outlaws through Apache territory when movement caught his eye. A figure in the darkness, raising something. Jake fired without hesitation. When he reached the body, his lantern revealed not a weapon, but a wooden toy bow clutched in the hands of a 12-year-old boy named Talon. The mother's wail still echoed in his skull. He'd tried explaining it was an accident, that the boy shouldn't have been there, that he'd thought, but words meant nothing to a woman cradling her dead child. The Apache elders arrived, their faces carved from stone. They took the boy's body and disappeared into the night, leaving Jake alone with his smoking gun and shattered conscience. He'd turned in his badge the next morning. Spent 2 years drowning in bottles, sleeping in alleys, waking up in towns he didn't remember entering. 3 failed attempts to end it. The gun always jammed. The rope always broke. The river always spit him back onto the shore. It seemed even death didn't want him. For the past year, he'd been working at a failing ranch outside Red Mesa, keeping his head down, speaking to no one. The pocket watch in his vest had stopped the moment he pulled that trigger, frozen at 8:17, a permanent reminder of the second his life ended. Now, riding through the desert darkness with a terrified stranger behind him, Jake wondered if this was fate's cruel joke. He'd saved no one that night. Couldn't save himself. What made him think he could save her? Clara's arms wrapped hesitantly around his waist as the horse climbed the rocky path. She hadn't asked questions, hadn't demanded explanations, just climbed on when he offered his hand, trusting an armed stranger because she had no other choice. Jake understood that kind of desperation. When you're drowning, you don't question the hand that reaches for you. You just grab on and pray it's strong enough to pull you up. The ranch appeared on the horizon, a small structure silhouetted against the star-filled sky. Lamplight glowed in one window. Nightshade was still awake. Jake's jaw tightened. The Apache man who worked beside him, who'd become something like a friend, who didn't know the blood on Jake's hands was Apache blood. How long could he keep that secret? How long before the past caught up? As it always did, Clara stirred behind him. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake said nothing. He'd learned long ago that good intentions meant nothing. Only actions mattered. and his actions had killed an innocent child. He was no savior, just another ghost, temporarily visible in the lamplight. The cabin materialized from the darkness like a promise half-kept. Weathered wood, a sagging porch, windows that caught the moonlight like tired eyes. Jake dismounted first, then helped Clara down, her legs buckled, and he caught her elbow. Easy now. Before they reached the door, it swung open. A man stood silhouetted against the interior lamplight, tall and broad-shouldered, with long black hair tied back. His presence filled the doorframe like a challenge. "Naiche," Jake said quietly. "We got company." The Apache man stepped into the moonlight, and Clara's breath caught. A jagged scar ran from his collarbone to his sternum, visible above his shirt collar. His face was angular, weathered, with eyes that seemed to see through skin and bone into the truth beneath. He looked at Clara with an expression she couldn't read, not hostile, but not welcoming either. Then his gaze shifted to Jake, and something passed between them. A question, a recognition. After a long moment, Naiche nodded once and stepped aside. The interior was sparse but clean. A table, 3 mismatched chairs, a wood stove radiating warmth. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling beams, filling the air with sage and something else Clara couldn't name. Apache medicine, she realized. "She can take the back room," Jake said, not meeting Naiche's eyes. "Just for tonight, maybe a few days." Naiche studied them both, his face unreadable. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. "There is bread, water in the basin." He gestured toward a narrow door. "The room is small. It's perfect," Clara said quickly. "Thank you, both of you." Naiche's eyes lingered on her torn dress, the bruise darkening her cheekbone. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the shadows of the cabin. Jake showed Clara to the room barely larger than a storage closet, with a narrow cot and a single window. "It ain't much. It's more than I had an hour ago." She set down her canvas bag, then turned to face him. "Why are you helping me?" The question hung between them. Jake's hand drifted to the pocket watch in his vest, an unconscious gesture. "Can't say I know the answer to that. Most men would have left me there. Or worse. I ain't most men." His voice was hollow. "Get some rest. We'll figure things out come morning." He closed the door before she could respond, leaving her alone with the profound silence of the desert night. In the main room, Naiche sat at the table, cleaning a hunting knife with methodical precision. Jake poured himself water from the pitcher, his hands trembling slightly. "You bring trouble," Naiche said without looking up. "I know. The town will talk." "Let them talk." Naiche's knife paused mid-stroke. "You know who she is. A woman who needed help. Many people need help. You do not bring them here." The Apache man finally looked up, his dark eyes piercing. "Why her?" Jake had no answer. Or perhaps he had too many. None of them making sense. He'd been ready to end his life on that platform. Then Clara appeared, another broken soul in the darkness, and something shifted. Not redemption, he didn't believe in that anymore, but maybe a postponement of the inevitable. "I don't know," he admitted. Naiche resumed cleaning his blade. After a long silence, he said, "She can stay. But when the trouble comes, we face it together." Agreed. What Jake didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Naisha had been waiting 3 years for this moment. Not for Clara specifically, but for the test that would reveal whether Jake Morrison deserved the mercy Nietzsche had already decided to grant him. 3 years ago, Nietzsche had been 25, returning from a hunting trip when he heard his mother scream. He'd run through the darkness to find his 12-year-old brother Talon lying in the dirt, blood pooling beneath him. A white man in a marshal's uniform stood frozen, gun still smoking. Nietzsche had lunged forward, but the tribal elders held him back. Not now, they whispered. Not like this. They carried Talon's small body home while the marshal fled into the night. Nietzsche spent 6 months tracking Jake Morrison, learning his patterns, waiting for the right moment to exact revenge. He watched Jake deteriorate, saw him press guns to his head only to lower them at the last second, saw him wake screaming from nightmares, calling a child's name. One night, Nietzsche found Jake passed out in an alley, his own vomit pooling around him. The knife was in Nietzsche's hand, the man's throat exposed, one cut, and his brother would be avenged. But Nietzsche remembered his mother's words before the fever took her 6 months after Talon's death. Hatred is a fire that burns the one who carries it. Choose water instead. Choose to drown the flames. He'd put the knife away and walked into the alley. "You are dying," he told the semi-conscious Jake. "If you want to live, come with me." Jake had looked up with dead eyes. "Why?" "Because dying slow is harder than dying fast. And you deserve hard." That was 2 years ago. Nietzsche had given Jake work, watched him slowly piece together fragments of a life. Never mentioned Talon. Never revealed the connection. Some truths, he'd learned, had their own timing. Now, watching Jake pour water with shaking hands, Nietzsche wondered if that timing had finally arrived. The woman in the back room was a catalyst. Trouble was coming. He could feel it in the desert wind, taste it in the dust. And when trouble came, truths emerged like bones from shallow graves. The ranch they lived on was dying as slowly as Jake had been. 12 scrawny cows that barely produced milk, 6 chickens that laid eggs sporadically, a few acres of stubborn earth that yielded crops grudgingly. The banknote for $800 sat in Jake's drawer. Payment due in 2 weeks. Neither man had that kind of money. Neither man particularly cared. Red Mesa sprawled 2 miles south. A collection of sun-bleached buildings and 200 souls who eyed Nietzsche with suspicion and Jake with pity. The nearest neighbor, Eleanor Hayes, was a widow who believed suffering built character, and that character was best demonstrated through judgment of others. This was their world. Small, harsh, unforgiving. And now Clara Whitmore had entered it, bringing whatever demons chased her. Nietzsche sheathed his knife. "Tomorrow, I will teach her to ride properly. If she stays, she needs to be useful." Jake nodded. "Appreciate it." "And Jake," Nietzsche's voice was soft but firm, "whatever's coming, we do not run. We stand." "We stand," Jake echoed, though standing was something he'd forgotten how to do long ago. In the back room, Clara lay on the cot, one hand pressed against her stomach where new life grew in secret, the other clutching the small knife hidden in her bag. She'd learned long ago that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. But tonight, exhausted beyond measure, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found shelter in the storm outside. A coyote howled at the moon. The sound carried across the desert like a warning of things to come. 3 days after Clara arrived, the whispers started. Red Mesa was too small to keep secrets, and a woman appearing from nowhere always drew attention. By the 4th morning, Eleanor Hayes stood on Jake's porch, her face pinched tight as dried leather. Jacob Morrison. She didn't wait for an invitation, her eyes scanning past him toward the interior. The whole town's talking. You've got a strange woman living here with you and that Apache. Jake leaned against the doorframe, deliberately blocking her view. She's family. Distant cousin from back east. Her folks passed, and she needed a place. Family. Eleanor's tone dripped skepticism. Funny how this cousin appears in the dead of night without so much as a telegram. Funny how she's got bruises on her face and fear in her eyes. Inside, Clara pressed herself against the wall of her room, heart hammering. She could hear every word through the thin walls. Her hand found the small knife she kept under her pillow. Ain't nothing funny about tragedy, Eleanor. Jake's voice remained level, but his jaw tightened. Woman lost her parents, traveled alone, had some trouble on the way. Now she's here, and that's all there is to it. Is it? Eleanor stepped closer, lowering her voice to a harsh whisper. Because Sheriff Cooper was through here yesterday asking questions. Said there's a woman wanted out of New Mexico. Murder charge. $5,000 reward. Clara's breath stopped. 5,000. The number hit like a fist to the stomach. Men had killed for far less. Don't know nothing about that. Jake straightened to his full height. And unless you got proof my cousin is this woman you're talking about, I'd appreciate you keeping speculation to yourself. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake. Jacob, harboring criminals, living with a savage. Careful. The word came quiet but sharp as a blade. The widow took a step back, surprised by the steel in his voice. After a moment, she smoothed her dress with rigid hands. I'll be watching. All of us will be watching. She turned and marched down the path, her spine straight as a judge's gavel. Jake remained motionless until she disappeared from view. Then his shoulders sagged, and he braced himself against the doorframe. Outside, Naiche emerged from behind the shed, a hunting knife still in his hand. He'd been there the entire time, ready if Eleanor brought company. Their eyes met across the dusty yard, a silent understanding passing between them. Inside, Clara sank onto the cot, trembling. $5,000. The number echoed in her skull like a death sentence. Harold Beckham's family must have posted the reward. They wanted her dead or dancing at the end of a rope. And they had the money to make it happen. She should leave. Tonight. Before she destroyed the only people who'd shown her kindness. That afternoon, while Clara helped hang laundry, a rider approached. She ducked behind the clothesline, watching through damp sheets as a well-dressed man dismounted. Charles Griffith, owner of Red Mesa Bank, carried himself with the arrogance of someone who controlled other people's fates. He handed Jake a sealed envelope without dismounting. 10 days, Morrison. That's all you've got left. $800, or the bank takes possession. Griffith's eyes swept the modest property with barely concealed contempt. Might be doing you a favor. This place is barely worth the dirt it's sitting on. Jake took the envelope without opening it. I'm aware of the terms. Are you aware of the interest accumulating daily? Are you aware that I've got 3 buyers interested in this land? Griffith leaned forward in his saddle. My advice, walk away now. Save yourself the humiliation of forced removal. Noted. And Morrison. Griffith's smile didn't reach his eyes. I hear you're taking in strays. Woman and an Indian. People are concerned about the moral character of their neighbors. People should mind their own affairs. In a town this size, everyone's affairs are everyone's business. Griffith tipped his hat mockingly. 10 days. I'll be back with the sheriff to oversee the transfer. After he rode away, Jake stood holding the envelope like it weighed more than paper had a right to weigh. $800. It might as well have been 8,000. Naiche appeared beside him, moving silent as smoke. Without a word, he produced a small leather pouch, worn smooth from years of handling. He pressed it into Jake's palm. What's this? 3 years? Naiche's voice was quiet. Every dollar I could save. 150. Jake tried to hand it back. I can't. Family shares burden. Naiche closed Jake's fingers around the pouch. That is what family does. The word hung in the desert air. Family. Neither man had spoken it before. But there it was. Finally given voice. Jake's throat tightened. He nodded once, unable to speak. Still short. Naiche continued. The horse. Red mare. She would bring 200, maybe more. Jake's hand moved unconsciously toward the corral where his red mare grazed. He'd had that horse for 5 years, trained her from a wild filly. She was the only thing he owned that he actually loved. I'll think about it. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The walls of her small room pressed in like a coffin. She thought about Jake's mare, about Naiche's life savings, about 2 men sacrificing everything for a woman they barely knew. She thought about Vernon Whitmore, her uncle who'd orchestrated her hell. Harold Beckham's twisted face as he'd pinned her down. The false accusation. The bounty hunters who would come. She couldn't let these men suffer for her sins. Quietly, she began packing her few belongings into the canvas bag. She'd wait until they slept, then slip away into the darkness. It was the only way to protect them. She'd head south, maybe cross into Mexico, disappear where American law couldn't reach. Her hand touched her stomach, barely showing yet. The baby Harold's baby, conceived in violence, was both curse and miracle. She'd figure something out. She always did. The floorboards outside her door creaked. Clara froze. Silence. Then the sound of someone settling against the wall, right outside her room. She cracked the door open. Naiche sat with his back against the frame, his hunting knife across his knees, eyes open and alert in the darkness. Their gazes met. He said nothing, didn't ask what she was doing, didn't question the packed bag visible behind her. He simply sat there, a silent sentinel. Clara understood the message. You don't run alone, not from this family. She closed the door, unpacked her bag, and lay back on the cot. Tears slipped down her temples into her hair. When was the last time someone had cared enough to stop her from making a mistake? When was the last time she'd felt protected instead of trapped through the thin wall? She heard Naiche's steady breathing as he kept watch, keeping her in, or keeping danger out, perhaps both. Outside, a warm wind swept across the desert, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Somewhere in the darkness, coyotes called to each other, their voices rising and falling like questions without answers. Morning came harsh and bright. Clara emerged from her room to find Naicha waiting at the table, the small knife she'd kept hidden now lying before him. He must have taken it during the night, while she slept. He pushed it across the table toward her. "For protection," he said simply, "but not for running." Clara picked up the blade, feeling its weight, its purpose. She slipped it into her belt and met his eyes. "I won't run." "Good." He stood. "Then today, you learn to shoot. If trouble comes, you stand with us." Jake appeared in the doorway, hollow-eyed from another sleepless night. He looked at Clara, then at Naiche, sensing something had shifted during the darkness. "We stand together," Clara said, her voice steady for the first time since arriving. "Whatever comes." Jake nodded slowly. "Then we'd better prepare, because when it comes, it's going to come hard." None of them knew how right he was, or how soon. Over the next week, something unexpected happened. The three of them found a rhythm, like musicians discovering they could play the same song without speaking. Jake taught Clara to ride. She approached his red mare with cautious hands, whispering soft words the horse seemed to understand. Within days, she sat the saddle like she'd been born to it, her body moving with the animal's gait in natural harmony. Jake watched from the fence, surprised. The mare had thrown 2 ranch hands last year. Yet with Clara, she was gentle as a lamb. "You got a gift," he said one morning as Clara cantered past, her hair streaming behind her. She reined in beside him, slightly breathless, her face flushed with something close to joy. "My father taught me when I was young." Before, she stopped, the light dimming from her eyes. Jake nodded, asking no questions. The past was a door neither of them wanted opened. Naiche taught Clara to read the desert like a book written in dust and shadow. He showed her how to identify tracks, the delicate prints of rabbits, the heavier press of deer hooves, the distinctive pattern of rattlesnake bellies dragged through sand. He introduced her to plants that healed yarrow for wounds, sage for fever, willow bark for pain. "Apache people know this land," he explained, crushing dried leaves between his fingers to release their scent. "The land teaches those who listen." Clara listened with an intensity that surprised him. She asked questions, remembered answers, treated his knowledge with respect rather than the dismissive tolerance most whites showed. Once, she asked him to teach her words in his language. He hesitated, then taught her the word for water, for sky, for home. "Ku," she repeated carefully. "Water." "Good." Something shifted in Naiche's expression, a softening around his eyes. "You have good ear." Evenings, they worked together repairing fence posts, tending the struggling garden, feeding livestock. Clara proved surprisingly capable. Her hands, though small, were strong from years of work she never spoke about. She could mend a harness, dig a post hole, haul water without complaint. The first night Clara cooked for them. Jake and Naiche exchanged glances over their plates. The venison stew was rich with herbs, the cornbread golden and perfectly textured. Neither man had eaten this well in years. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" Jake asked. Clara's hand stilled on her fork. "My mother, before the fever took her, she made sure I could take care of myself." She paused. "Said a woman needs skills that can't be taken away." After that, cooking became her domain. She turned their meager provisions into meals that felt like comfort, like care, like something dangerously close to home. On the 7th night since Clara's arrival, they sat outside beneath a sky scattered with stars. Jake had built a small fire, more for light than warmth in the mild autumn evening. Naiche prepared his pipe with practiced movements, while Clara wrapped herself in a thin shawl. "Kentucky?" Jake said suddenly, his eyes distant. "That's where I'm from originally. Green hills, trees everywhere. Nothing like this desert." He gestured at the vast darkness around them. "Used to hate all this empty space. Now I understand why Apache people call it sacred. There's something honest about land that doesn't pretend to be welcoming." Naiche exhaled smoke that curled upward like prayers. "My people believe the desert tests you. Only the strong survive. Yes, but also only the truthful. You cannot lie to the land. It knows what you are." "What does it know about me?" Clara asked quietly. Naiche studied her through the smoke. "That you are stronger than you believe? That you carry weight no one should carry alone?" Tears pricked Clara's eyes. She blinked them back. "My parents died within days of each other. Fever swept through Boston like wildfire. I was 16. After they were gone, I had nothing except an uncle I'd never met. Vernon wrote saying he'd take care of me, that family mattered." Her laugh was bitter. "Family mattered, right until it didn't." "What happened?" Jake's voice was gentle. "He sold me." The words came flat, emotionless. "To his business partner. Arranged a marriage to a man 3 times my age in exchange for money. When I tried to refuse, he said I was ungrateful. Said women don't get choices." Jake's hands clenched. Naiche's expression darkened. "I don't want pity," Clara added quickly. "I just wanted you to know why I can't go back. Why I'd rather die out here than return to that life." "You won't have to," Jake said. "Not while I'm breathing." "Nor I," Naiche added. Clara looked between them 2 men who owed her nothing, who promised her everything. For the first time in years, she smiled. Not the careful, measured smile she'd learned to wear like armor, but a real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her face. Jake felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time he'd felt anything except guilt and exhaustion? When was the last time he'd looked forward to morning instead of dreading another day of existence? Naiche watched Jake watching Clara and recognized the beginning of something dangerous. Not romantic love that would come or it wouldn't, but something equally powerful, hope. Hope was what kept men fighting when logic said surrender. Hope was what made them stand when their bodies screamed to fall. Hope was also what made loss unbearable. They sat in comfortable silence, 3 damaged souls finding temporary peace in each other's presence. No one mentioned tomorrow's troubles or yesterday's wounds. For this moment, the present was enough. 3 days later, Clara woke feeling wrong. Her stomach churned, and cold sweat beaded her forehead. She barely made it outside before vomiting violently behind the cabin. Jake found her there, pale and shaking. "I'm getting the doctor." "No." Clara grabbed his arm. "No doctor. Please. You're sick." "I'm fine. Just something I ate." But it happened again the next morning. And the next. Jake paced the cabin like a caged animal while Naiche watched Clara with knowing eyes. Not sickness. Naisha said finally. Something else. Clara's head snapped up. Their eyes met, and understanding passed between them. Naisha saw what Jake, in his worry, had missed. The slight rounding of her belly, the way she touched her stomach unconsciously, the timing of her symptoms. I can help, Naisha said quietly. Apache women. They teach me medicines. For this condition, there are herbs. Make the sickness less. Thank you, Clara whispered. Jake looked between them, confused. What am I missing? Nothing you need worry about now, Naisha said. I will make tea. She will be better soon. That night, while Clara slept fitfully, Naisha brewed a mixture of ginger root and mint he'd gathered from the hills. Jake sat at the table, his head in his hands. I can't lose another person, Jake said, so quietly Naisha almost didn't hear. I can't watch someone else die because of me. She is not dying. She is creating life. Jake's head jerked up. What? The woman carries child, 3 months, maybe 4. Naisha poured the steaming tea into a cup. She has not told you because she is afraid. The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. Pregnant. Clara was pregnant, which meant the man she was forced to marry. Naisha continued, reading Jake's thoughts. This is why she cannot return. She carries proof of her shame, as they would call it. Proof of her uncle's crime. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Vernon Whitmore, the name he didn't know yet, but would learn. The man who'd sold his own niece, who destroyed her life for money. Does she know you know? Yes. I told her I would help. Naisha carried the tea toward Clara's room. She cried, said no one had helped her in so long. She forgot what it felt like. After Naisha disappeared into the back room, Jake sat alone in the darkness. He heard low voices, Naisha's steady murmur, Clara's softer responses. Heard her cry, then heard Naisha's words of comfort in a language Jake didn't understand, but whose meaning was clear. Family takes care of family. When Naisha emerged, he found Jake standing at the window, staring into the night. She's resting now. The tea will help. I won't let anything happen to her, Jake said. Or the baby. I know. Naisha placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. This is why you will survive what is coming. You have found reason to live again. Neither of them slept that night. They took turns checking on Clara, making sure she had water, that she was breathing easily, that she wasn't alone. When dawn broke, Clara woke to find both men asleep in chairs they'd dragged to her doorway. 2 guardians who'd kept watch through the darkness. Tears slid down her temples and into her hair. How strange, she thought, that the worst chapter of her life had led her here. To these 2 broken men who were teaching her what family actually meant. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the secret life growing there. You're safe, she whispered. I promise you're safe. It was a promise she desperately wanted to keep but had no power to guarantee. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning away the cool morning air. Another day in the desert. Another day of borrowed time. Sheriff Wade Cooper rode into Red Mesa on a Tuesday morning, his saddlebags heavy with papers and his expression grim. He was a lawman from New Mexico Territory, lean and weathered, with eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. By noon, wanted posters covered every surface in town: the general store, the saloon, the bank, the church door. Wanted for murder. Clara Whitmore, $5,000 reward. The crude sketch showed a young woman's face, frightened eyes, delicate features. Below, the details wanted for the murder of Harold Beckham. Prominent businessman. Considered dangerous. Approach with caution. $5,000. The number rippled through Red Mesa like wildfire. Men gathered in clusters, whispering, calculating. That kind of money could change a life. Buy land, start a business, feed a family for 5 years. Eleanor Hayes stood outside the general store, arms crossed, vindication written across her face. "I told you," she said to anyone who'd listen. "That Morrison boy's been harboring a murderer. Him and that savage both. Probably planning to collect the reward themselves." Charles Griffith studied the poster with particular interest. $5,000 would more than cover Morrison's debt. Perhaps the universe was offering an opportunity, a way to acquire that land and profit from justice simultaneously. Sheriff Cooper made his way to Jake's ranch by mid-afternoon, riding slow and deliberate. He wasn't a man who rushed into situations, especially not when dealing with a former marshal who might still know how to use a gun. Jake saw him coming from a quarter-mile away. He sent Clara inside with a sharp look, then positioned himself on the porch. Nietzsche emerging silently from the barn to stand 10 feet to his left. A united front. Cooper dismounted, keeping his hands visible. "Morrison? Heard you were out here." "Didn't believe it at first. Jake Morrison, legendary lawman, living in the middle of nowhere with nothing." "What do you want?" "Cooper. I think you know." He pulled a folded poster from his vest. "Looking for this woman. Clara Whitmore. Witnesses say she was seen at the rail station in Prescott 2 weeks ago. Trail led here. Now I'm hearing you've got a woman staying with you. Female cousin, according to town gossip." "That's right. My cousin." "Funny thing." Cooper unfolded the poster, letting it catch the wind. "Your cousin bears a striking resemblance to a wanted fugitive. Same age, same description, same timing. Lots of women look alike." $5,000. Morrison. That's the reward. Makes a man wonder if loyalty's worth more than that kind of money. Cooper's eyes flicked to Nietzsche, or if certain partnerships might be negotiable. Nietzsche's hand drifted to the knife at his belt. "We are not interested in blood money. Blood money." Cooper smiled without humor. "That's one way to put it. Another way is justice. Woman killed her husband in cold blood. Poisoned him, according to the family. That kind of evil shouldn't walk free." "You got proof?" Jake asked. "Or just accusations from interested parties?" "I got a warrant signed by a territorial judge. That's all the proof I need." Cooper remounted his horse. "I'll be back in 48 hours with proper authority. If she's here, you hand her over. If you interfere, you'll be charged as an accomplice. That's the law. Morrison, you used to believe in law." He rode away, leaving dust and dread in his wake. Inside, Clara had heard everything through the open window. She sat on her bed, shaking, one hand pressed against her mouth to keep from screaming. $5,000. Vernon had made sure the price was high enough to guarantee every bounty hunter in 3 territories would come looking. Jake found her like that, eyes wide with terror, breath coming in short gasps. "Why didn't you tell me you were wanted for murder?" His voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. I couldn't. You lied to me. To both of us. Let us risk everything for a story that wasn't true." The story was true. Clara stood, anger cutting through her fear. Everything I told you about my uncle, about being sold, about Harold Beckham, all of it was true. But I didn't kill him. I swear to God, I didn't kill him. Then what happened? The dam broke. Words poured out of Clara like poison that had festered too long. Vernon arranged the marriage. Harold was 60 years old, wealthy, cruel. 2 nights before the wedding, he came to my room, said he wanted to make sure I was worth the investment. Her voice cracked. He forced himself on me. I fought, but he was too strong. When it was over, he said if I told anyone, Vernon would throw me into the streets. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Nightshade stood in the doorway, his face carved from stone. The wedding happened anyway. That night, Harold drank heavily. Started up the stairs, talking about his rights as a husband. I told him to stay away, that I'd scream. He laughed, said who would believe me over him. Clara's tears fell freely now. He lunged at me. I stepped back. He was drunk, unsteady. He fell, tumbled down the entire staircase, broke his neck. Accident, Nightshade said quietly. His family didn't see it that way. They found me standing at the top of the stairs, frozen. Vernon was there within the hour. Told the sheriff I'd pushed Harold, that I'd poisoned his whiskey to make him unstable. The butler swore he'd seen me near the liquor cabinet. Later, I learned Vernon had paid him. Why would your uncle do this? Jake asked. Money. Harold's will left everything to his wife. If I was convicted of murder, the estate reverted to Harold's family, and Vernon had a business arrangement with them. He'd profit either way from the marriage or from my execution. Clara's laugh was hollow. I was never anything but merchandise to him. Jake's anger drained away, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. You're pregnant. From Beckham. Yes. She met his eyes. I know what people will say, that I should be ashamed, that the baby is tainted. But it's my child, and I won't let Vernon or anyone else take it from me. No one's taking anything from you, Jake said. Not while I'm breathing. Nightshade stepped into the room. This man, Vernon Whitmore, I know this name. Both Jake and Clara turned to him. 15 years ago, when I was young, a white man came to Apache lands near Red Mesa. He brought whiskey, guns, promised trade. My father's cousin welcomed him, fed him, showed him where silver ran in the hills. Nightshade's voice grew harder. 2 weeks later, that family was found dead. Mother, father, 2 children, scalped to make it look like rival tribe attack. But Apache know truth. It was white man's work. The man who brought whiskey and promises disappeared. His name was Vernon. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle assembled by cruel hands. He's been doing this for years, Clara whispered. Using people, destroying them, profiting from their deaths. Then it ends now, Jake said. He walked to his room, knelt beside his bed, and pried up a loose floorboard. The marshal's badge lay there, tarnished but intact, along with his service revolver. He'd put them away 3 years ago, swearing never to touch them again. He pinned the badge to his shirt. What are you doing? Clara asked. What I should have done 3 years ago. Standing up, Jake checked the revolver's cylinder, found it full. Cooper will be back in 48 hours. We've got 2 days to figure out how to prove your innocence and expose Vernon Whitmore. Or we run, Clara suggested. All of us. Head to Mexico. Start over. Running doesn't solve anything. I learned that the hard way. Jake holstered the gun. Besides, this is our home. We don't abandon home? Naiche nodded. We fight together. Apache way, white way, all ways. You could die, Clara said, looking between them. Both of you could die protecting me. We're already dead, in the ways that matter. Jake replied. Maybe this is how we come back to life. That night, they prepared. Jake cleaned weapons, counted ammunition. 6 bullets in his revolver, 12 more in a box. Naiche sharpened knives. Prepared his bow, a weapon most whites dismissed, but which could kill silently from impressive distance. Clara, despite her shaking hands, loaded the shotgun Jake taught her to use. They reinforced windows with boards, positioned barrels of water in case of fire, created escape routes through the back of the cabin. Military precision mixed with Apache cunning. How many men does Vernon have? Jake asked. In New Mexico, at least a dozen worked for him. Guards, enforcers. He has money to hire more. Clara paused. He won't come himself. He never does his own dirty work. Doesn't matter how many come, Naiche said. Matters that we are ready. As midnight approached, they sat at the table, 3 people bound by circumstance and choice. Why are you doing this? Clara asked softly. Really? You could turn me in, collect the reward, save your ranch. Jake was quiet for a long moment. 3 years ago, I killed an innocent boy because I was too quick to judge, too certain I knew what I was seeing. I've spent every day since wishing I could take it back, knowing I never can. Maybe I can't save him, but I can save you. That's got to count for something. Naiche met Jake's eyes across the table. Something passed between them, a recognition neither had voiced. And I have learned that vengeance is heavy burden, but justice, real justice that is worth carrying. Clara reached across the table, placing one hand on Jake's arm, the other on Naiche's. Thank you for being the family I chose instead of the one I was born into. Family, Jake repeated. The word felt foreign in his mouth, but right. Then we stand as family. Outside, the desert wind whispered warnings. 46 hours until Sheriff Cooper returned. 46 hours to prepare for the storm they all knew was coming. In the darkness, none of them slept. They kept watch. Weapons close, ears tuned to every sound. The night stretched endless, heavy with anticipation and dread. The wolves were circling, and when dawn came, they would need to be ready to fight. They came on the 3rd night, when the moon hid behind clouds and darkness lay thick as wool across the desert. Jake heard them first, the creak of leather, the whisper of boots on sand, the metallic click of hammers being cocked. They're here, he said quietly. Naiche and Clara were already moving. They'd drilled this. Clara took position by the window facing east, shotgun braced against the sill. Naiche crouched near the door, bow in hand, arrows laid out within reach. Jake positioned himself at the west window, revolver ready. The silence stretched. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs, each beat counting down to violence. Then fire bloomed in the darkness. A torch arced through the air, trailing sparks like a falling star, and crashed through the barn roof. Another followed. and another. The cattle. Clara gasped. Stay inside. Jake barked as flames climbed the dry wood with hungry speed. 6 masked figures materialized from the shadows, moving with military precision. Not amateurs. Not drunk cowboys looking for reward money. These were professionals. The first shot shattered the window above Clara's head. She dropped, glass raining down on her back. Her finger found the trigger. The shotgun's roar filled the cabin as she fired blindly into the darkness. The recoil slammed her shoulder, but she pumped another shell and fired again. Jake saw movement near the corral. He aimed, squeezed. A man cried out and fell. 5 left. Leach's bow whispered. An arrow found flesh, a choked gasp. Then silence. 4 left. They're trying to flush us out. Jake shouted over the gunfire. Don't take the bait. But the barn was fully engulfed now. Flames licking 50 feet into the night sky. The cattle screamed a sound that tore at something primal in Jake's chest. His mare shrieked from the corral, rearing against her rope. A figure sprinted toward the cabin's blind side. Naiche was through the door before Jake could stop him, knife gleaming in the firelight. There was a brief struggle. Then Naiche dragged the attacker's body into view. Jake ran out, grabbed the man's mask, yanked it off. Young face, maybe 25. Eyes wide with shock and pain. Naiche's knife protruded from between his ribs. Who sent you? Jake demanded. The dying man coughed blood. Vernon. He choked. Vernon sends his regards. Then he was gone. Inside. Naiche pulled Jake toward the cabin as bullets kicked up dirt around them. They dove through the door as the front window exploded. Jake felt something hot slice across his shoulder, a bullet or glass. He couldn't tell. Blood soaked through his shirt, warm and sticky. Clara turned, saw the wound, went pale. Jake. Keep shooting. She did. Tears streaming down her face, her hands steady despite the terror. Each blast of the shotgun was a prayer, a defiance, a refusal to surrender. Naiche moved to the kitchen, wrapped cloth around a gash on his ribs where someone's blade had found him in the darkness. His face remained impassive, but Jake saw pain in the tightness around his eyes. How bad? Jake asked. I will live. You? Same. They returned to the windows. The attackers had pulled back, regrouping in the darkness beyond the firelight. The barn collapsed with a sound like the world ending, sending sparks spiraling into the sky. Jake counted bodies visible in the flickering light. 3 down. 3 still out there. Why did they stop? Clara whispered. Because we're better fighters than they expected. Jake said. Or because they're waiting for something. What they were waiting for became clear at dawn. As pale light crept across the horizon, the full extent of the devastation revealed itself. The barn was gone, reduced to smoking timbers. 8 of their 12 cattle lay dead, shot or burned. The corral fence was destroyed, and worst of all, Jake's red mare lay on her side, a bullet through her skull. Jake stood over the horse that had been his companion for 5 years. His last connection to the man he'd been before everything fell apart. Rage and grief warred in his chest, neither winning. Naiche touched his shoulder. I am sorry. Jake nodded, unable to speak. The damage went beyond what they could see. $1,200, at least. More than the bank debt. More than they could ever hope to repay. Their home, their livelihood, their future all reduced to ash and blood in a single night. I'm going to town, Jake said. Maybe someone will help. Maybe the sheriff. Jake. Clara's voice was gentle but firm. You know what you'll find there. He went anyway, riding one of the remaining horses bareback, his wounded shoulders screaming with each movement. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the desert into a furnace. Red Mesa looked the same as always, but everything felt different, hostile. As Jake rode down the main street, conversation stopped. People turned away, found sudden business elsewhere, doors closed, windows shuttered. Jake dismounted outside the general store. Inside, Eleanor Hayes stood with 3 other women, their faces set like concrete. Mrs. Hayes, Jake began. Last night we were attacked. The barn burned, cattle killed. You need to leave. Eleanor interrupted. You're not welcome here. Jacob Morrison, you're harboring a murderer, a wanted criminal. You've made your choice, and now you live with the consequences. She's innocent. The law says otherwise. And you, Eleanor's voice rose. You who once wore a badge, who swore to uphold justice, you've become everything you once fought against. The other women murmured agreement. Jake felt their judgment like physical blows. He tried the bank next. Charles Griffith sat behind his ornate desk, fingers steepled, expression cold as January ice. Morrison, come to beg. Come to discuss terms. The attack last night destroyed. I'm aware. The whole town heard the gunfire. Watched the flames. Griffith leaned forward. Your debt comes due in 3 days. You currently owe $800. With the destruction of collateral, I'm within my rights to demand immediate payment. You know I don't have it. Then the property transfers to the bank. You have 72 hours to vacate. Griffith smiled, showing too many teeth. Unless you'd like to make this easier on everyone, turn over the woman, collect the reward. You'd have enough to pay your debt and still have $4,000 left over. Jake's hand moved toward his gun. Griffith's smile widened. Go ahead. Draw on me in my own bank. Give me reason to have you arrested alongside your little murderer. Jake forced his hand away from the weapon, turned and walked out before he did something that couldn't be undone. His last stop was the sheriff's office. Wade Cooper sat cleaning his rifle, the wanted poster for Clara pinned prominently on the wall behind him. Morrison, you look terrible. We were attacked last night. 6 men, professionals. One of them said Vernon Whitmore sent him before he died. Cooper's expression didn't change. You kill someone. Self-defense. He came at my partner with a knife. Your partner? You mean the Apache? Cooper set down his rifle. Here's how this works. You're harboring a fugitive. That makes you an accomplice. The men who attacked you, for all I know. They were citizens attempting a lawful arrest and you murdered them. I'd be within my rights to arrest you right now. You're not going to investigate? Investigate what a wanted criminal's lies. Cooper stood. I'll be at your place tomorrow at noon. You hand over Clara Whitmore peacefully, or I come back with a posse and take her by force, and anyone who stands in the way gets buried alongside her. Jake walked back to his horse on legs that felt disconnected from his body. The town square stretched before him, and he stood there alone, the marshal's badge on his chest catching the sunlight like a target. Every door was closed, every face was turned away. He'd been a lawman once, respected and feared. Now he was nothing, less than nothing, a traitor to his own kind, protecting the unworthy, standing with savages. He rode home as the sun reached its zenith, heat waves shimmering across the desert like lies made visible. Clara sat on what remained of the porch steps, her face swollen from crying. Naiche was finishing bandaging his ribs, his movements slow and careful. They looked up as Jake dismounted, hope dying in their eyes when they saw his expression. "No help," Jake said flatly. "No mercy. Cooper's coming tomorrow at noon. After that, we're on our own against however many men he brings." Clara buried her face in her hands. "This is my fault. Everything you've lost." "It's Vernon's fault," Jake corrected. "And every coward in that town who chose comfort over courage." Naiche tied off the bandage. "We cannot win this fight. Too many enemies. Too few bullets." Jake sank onto the steps beside Clara. Exhaustion crushing him. His shoulder throbbed. His horse was dead. His home was destroyed. The law wanted them arrested or killed. The town wanted them gone. There was no way forward, no path to victory, no hope of survival. He pulled his revolver from its holster, turned it over in his hands. The same gun that had killed Talon 3 years ago. The same gun he'd pressed to his temple a dozen times, always finding some reason not to pull the trigger. Maybe the reason was gone now. Maybe this was how it ended. Not in redemption, but in ashes. His finger found the trigger. The metal was warm from the sun, smooth from use. It would be so easy. One pull, 1 second of pain, then silence. Peace. Clara's hand covered his. "Feel this?" She pressed his palm against her belly. For a moment, Jake felt nothing. Then there, a flutter. Tiny but unmistakable. Life asserting itself against death. Hope refusing to surrender. Tears he'd held back for 3 years finally broke free, spilling down Jake's weathered face. "I can't save anyone. I couldn't save that boy. Can't save this ranch. Can't save you. You already saved me," Clara said softly. "That's enough." Naiche lowered himself to sit on Jake's other side, his hand settling on Jake's shoulder. "We are still alive. We still fight." Jake looked between them, this impossible family born from tragedy and choice. Clara, carrying new life despite everything trying to destroy her. Naiche, carrying forgiveness despite every reason for hatred. And himself, carrying guilt that might finally, possibly, be transforming into purpose. He stood slowly, walked to his room, and retrieved the old suicide letter he'd written years ago. In the fading light, he held it to the remnants of the barn fire. The paper caught, curled, turned to ash. "We stand together," Jake said. "Tomorrow, when they come, we stand together." Clara echoed. "As family." Naiche added. The desert night fell around them, heavy with the weight of the coming storm. But for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morrison wasn't running from the dawn. He was ready to face it. That night, while Clara slept fitfully, Jake and Naiche sat in the darkness of the ruined cabin, planning what seemed impossible. "Sheriff Cooper has files," Jake said. "Old cases. If Vernon Whitmore has been doing this for years, there might be evidence. Something we can use. His office is locked, guarded. Not at 3 in the morning." Jake checked his revolver. "We've got nothing to lose." They moved through Red Mesa like shadows, keeping to alleys and back paths. The sheriff's office sat dark and silent on the edge of town, a squat adobe building with barred windows. The lock on the back door was simple. Jake had it open in 30 seconds. Inside, The office smelled of tobacco and old paper. Jake lit a small candle, shielding the flame with his hand. Filing cabinets lined one wall, stuffed with years of reports and complaints. "What are we looking for?" Nightshade whispered. "Anything about Vernon Whitmore. Anything about murders 15 years ago." They searched in silence, pulling files, scanning pages, moving systematically through decades of territorial law enforcement. Most of it was mundane cattle theft, drunken brawls, land disputes. Then Jake found it. A thin folder marked "Unsolved Apache Massacre." His hands shook as he opened it. The report was dated 15 years prior. A family of 4 found dead 5 miles outside Red Mesa. Scalped, mutilated, made to look like intertribal violence. But the investigating officer had noted inconsistencies. The wounds were wrong. The methods weren't Apache. The timing was suspicious. Witnesses reported seeing a white man in the area days before. Well-dressed, friendly, asking about mineral deposits. He'd been entertained by the family, shown hospitality, then disappeared right before the murders. One detail made Jake's blood freeze. A survivor had been found, a 5-year-old girl, hiding in a root cellar, too terrified to speak. She'd been taken to the mission in Prescott, where she was eventually adopted by a traveling merchant family from the East. No name, no follow-up. Just a note that she'd been saved from savagery and given Christian civilization. "Nightshade." Jake breathed. There was a survivor, a little girl. Nightshade took the file, his hands reverent as he read. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I did not know. My family never told me someone lived." "Why wouldn't they tell you?" "Shame, perhaps. That we could not protect all our children, or fear. If white men knew a witness existed, they would hunt her." Jake's mind raced. A 5-year-old survivor, adopted by a merchant family. Clara had said she was adopted by the Whitmores around age 5, that she had no memories before that except nightmares. "How old is Clara?" Nightshade asked quietly, his thoughts clearly following the same path. 19? 20 maybe? Jake did the math. 15 years ago. She would have been 5 years old. They stared at each other in the candlelight, the implications crashing over them like cold water. Jake found another file, this one more recent. An investigation into Harold Beckham, Clara's dead husband. Beckham had been involved in illegal arms trading, selling weapons to criminal enterprises across 3 territories. His business partner, listed prominently in the records, Vernon Whitmore. The pattern became clear. Vernon had orchestrated the massacre to steal Apache land rich in silver deposits, had used the orphaned girl as cover, adopting her to appear charitable while actually keeping a potential witness under control. Years later, when Clara came of age, he'd sold her to his criminal partner, Beckham, profiting from her twice. When Beckham died and Clara became inconvenient, Vernon framed her for murder, ensuring she'd hang and take all his secrets to the grave. "He's been playing this game for 15 years, Jake said, using people, destroying them, erasing his tracks. Nightshade closed the file carefully. "Then we have proof. We take this to territorial authorities. Cooper is territorial authority, and he's either corrupt or a fool." Jake gathered the files. "But these documents might buy us time, maybe enough to—" He stopped. Nightshade had gone rigid, his hand raised in warning. Footsteps outside. The creak of the front door opening. They dove behind the desk as Sheriff Cooper entered. carrying a lamp. He wasn't alone. Another man followed, older, well-dressed, with cold eyes and an air of wealth. "Are you certain they'll come tomorrow?" the stranger asked. Morrison's got no choice. He can't run with a pregnant woman, can't fight against 20 armed men. Cooper poured whiskey into 2 glasses. "Your problem will be solved by sunset." The stranger, Vernon Whitmore, Jake realized with certainty, accepted the glass. "And the files, the old investigation?" "Destroyed. I burned them myself when you first contacted me." Jake's heart sank. The files they held were copies, and Cooper had just admitted to destroying the originals. Without original documentation, their evidence was worthless. "What about witnesses?" Vernon asked. "The Apache, he'll be killed, resisting arrest. Morrison, too, if he's stupid enough to stand with them. The woman hangs legally in New Mexico." Vernon smiled. "Clean, simple. Justice served." Jake's finger tightened on his revolver. He could end this now. 2 bullets, 2 murderers dead. But Nietzsche's hand gripped his wrist, held firm. "Not yet," the gesture said. "Not like this." They waited until the men left, then slipped out the way they'd come. Files clutched tight, back at the ranch. They found Clara awake, sitting by the dying embers of a fire. She looked up as they entered, saw their faces, and stood slowly. "What did you find?" Jake spread the files on the table. "Vernon Whitmore killed an Apache family 15 years ago, massacred them for their land. There was one survivor, a 5-year-old girl." Clara's face went pale. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because that girl was adopted by a white family, given a new name, new life." Jake met her eyes. "Clara, what do you remember about your childhood, your real childhood, before the Whitmores?" I don't remember anything before age 6. The Whitmores said I was their niece, that my parents died of fever. But sometimes I have dreams." Her voice trembled. "Fire, screaming, a woman's voice singing in a language I don't understand. I always thought they were nightmares." "Not nightmares," Nietzsche said softly. "Memories." Jake watched understanding dawn on Clara's face. Watched her hand move unconsciously to her chest, where, beneath her dress, she wore a small turquoise pendant. She'd had it as long as she could remember. She'd once told him. The only thing the Whitmores hadn't taken away. "That stone," Nietzsche said, pointing. "May I see it?" Clara removed the pendant with shaking hands. Nietzsche took it reverently, turning it over. On the back, barely visible, were symbols worn smooth with time. "Apache symbols. For protection, for daughter." His voice broke. "The family that died, they were my mother's sister's family. My cousin. Her name was Kai. She would be your age now." "No." Clara backed away, shaking her head. "No, that's not possible. I can't be." "You have their eyes." Nietzsche continued. "High cheekbones. The way you move, silent like desert cat. I should have seen it before." Clara sank into a chair, the pendant falling from her nerveless fingers. "Vernon killed my real parents, then adopted me, raised me like livestock, sold me to his partner, and when I became inconvenient, he tried to have me executed. The horror of it settled over them like a shroud. Not just murder, but a conspiracy spanning 15 years. Not just cruelty, but calculated evil designed to erase an entire family from existence." "The boy," Jake said suddenly, turning to Nietzsche. Talon, your brother. Tell me about the night he died. Naiche's jaw tightened. 3 years ago. Talon was 12. Rebellious, he was gone often. Would not say where. The elders worried he was falling in with bad elements. What kind of bad elements? White men, traders, men who brought whiskey and guns. Naiche's eyes widened as he made the connection. Vernon's men. They recruited him, Jake said. A 12-year-old Apache boy would be perfect for running messages, spying on tribal movements. They used him, just like Vernon uses everyone. The night I shot him, Jake continued, forcing himself through the painful memory, he was running, not attacking, running away. And he had a bow, a child's toy bow. I thought it was a weapon, but it was just a toy. Because he was escaping. Naiche finished. They had him doing their work, and he tried to run. You were chasing the real criminals, and Talon got caught between. The three of them sat in silence. The full scope of Vernon's evil revealed. He'd orchestrated everything: the massacre that orphaned Clara, the criminal enterprise that enslaved Talon, the web of corruption that ensnared Jake. 3 lives destroyed by one man's greed. I should have known, Jake said. I was so certain I knew what I was seeing. I never questioned whether the boy was really a threat. I just pulled the trigger. You were manipulated, Naiche said. As we all were. Vernon created the circumstances, and we paid the price. Clara stood, moving to Naiche. You're my family. My real family. You've been protecting me this whole time without even knowing. Bloodline does not always show itself, Naiche said. But it always calls to itself. Perhaps that is why you were brought here. To the last of your mother's people. Jake watched them embrace. 2 survivors of Vernon's cruelty finding each other across the chasm of years and lies. He should have felt triumph at solving the puzzle. But all he felt was rage. Vernon Whitmore had stolen everything. From Clara, from Naiche, from Talon, from Jake himself, who'd become a killer of children because of Vernon's schemes. Tomorrow Cooper comes, Jake said. With 20 men and Vernon's money. They'll kill us, burn what's left of this place, and claim justice was served. Then tonight we plan, Naiche said, and tomorrow we make Vernon pay for all he has taken. How? Clara asked. We have files, but Cooper destroyed the originals. We have testimony. But who would believe us? We're a disgraced lawman, a wanted murderer, and an Apache. The law won't listen. Jake looked at the marshal's badge pinned to his shirt. Tarnished, dented, but still present. Then we make our own justice. The way it was supposed to be done before men like Vernon corrupted it. In the candlelight, the 3 of them bent over the files, planning not just survival, but reckoning. Blood had been spilled, lives had been stolen. And tomorrow, at noon, the debt would come due. Outside, the desert wind carried the scent of coming rain. A storm was building on the horizon, dark and inevitable. And when it broke, it would wash everything clean or drown them all trying. They came at dawn. 12 riders materializing from the desert, like demons summoned from hell. Vernon Whitmore led them, sitting tall in his saddle, dressed in expensive black like he was attending a funeral. Sheriff Wade Cooper rode at his right hand, a rifle across his saddle horn. The rest were hard men with dead eyes, killers bought and paid for. They stopped 100 yards from the ruined ranch, spreading out in a loose semicircle, surrounding, trapping. Vernon's voice carried across the morning air, smooth and cultured. Jacob Morrison, I know you're in there. I know you have something that belongs to me. Jake stood on what remained of the porch, the marshal's badge catching the first light. Naiche positioned himself at the window, bow ready. Clara crouched behind overturned furniture, shotgun braced against her shoulder, her belly round and heavy. Clara Whitmore belongs to herself. Jake called back, and you're going to answer for what you've done, all of it. Vernon laughed, the sound carrying genuine amusement. Answer to whom you a disgraced lawman who murdered a child, that savage beside you, or perhaps the murderess hiding in your house. He gestured broadly to his men. I have the law on my side. I have witnesses. I have power. What do you have? The truth. Truth. Vernon's smile widened. Truth is whatever I say it is. I've been writing truth for 15 years. Morrison, and this is how your story ends. He raised his hand. 12 rifles lifted in unison. Last chance, Vernon called. Send out the woman, and you two can walk away. Refuse, and we burn you out. Clara started to stand, to walk out and surrender. But Jake's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. No, I won't let you die for me. We stand together, Jake said firmly. That's what family does. Naiche notched an arrow. Together. Vernon's hand dropped. The world exploded into gunfire. Bullets tore through the walls, sending splinters flying. Glass shattered. Adobe cracked and crumbled. Jake fired methodically, each shot calculated, making every bullet count. 1 man fell. 2. Naiche's arrows whispered death. Silent, invisible, until they found flesh. 3 men down. Clara's shotgun roared, the scatter shot hitting 2 men who tried to flank from the right. They fell screaming, but there were too many. For every man who fell, 2 more kept coming. They'd circle, fire, retreat, then advance from a different angle. Professional tactics, military precision. A bullet grazed Jake's temple, spinning him around. Blood poured down his face, hot and blinding. He wiped it away with his sleeve. Kept firing. Naiche grunted as something hit his leg. He staggered but didn't fall, loosing another arrow through gritted teeth. Then Clara gasped, not from fear, from pain. No, she whispered. Not now. Please, not now. But babies don't wait for convenient timing. Water gushed down her legs, soaking her dress. Another contraction seized her, doubling her over. Jake, she managed. The baby. Jake's blood turned to ice. How long? Contraction started an hour ago. I didn't want to. She cried out as another wave hit. They're close, too close. Naiche, she's in labor. The Apache glanced back, his face grim. She cannot have baby here. Not like this. But they had no choice. Clara couldn't run, couldn't even stand. She collapsed against the wall, clutching her stomach, tears streaming down her face. Outside. Vernon's voice rang with triumph. What's wrong? Morrison running out of bullets, running out of time. Jake had 4 bullets left. Naiche was down to 3 arrows. And Clara was about to give birth in the middle of a battlefield. Then, impossibly, a voice called from outside. Jacob Morrison, you let me in this instant. Eleanor Hayes marched across the killing ground like she was heading to Sunday service, completely ignoring the gunfire. Men stopped shooting in sheer confusion as the elderly widow strode past them, carrying a leather bag. Mrs. Hayes, get down, Jake shouted. I'll do no such thing. She reached the porch, glaring at Vernon's men. You should all be ashamed. Shooting at a woman in labor. Where's your decency? She pushed past Jake into the cabin, took one look at Clara, and rolled up her sleeves. How far apart are the contractions? 2 minutes. Clara gasped. Maybe less. Then we haven't much time. You two keep fighting. I'll bring this baby into the world. Eleanor's voice softened as she knelt beside Clara. I delivered 43 children in my life. Dear, you're in good hands. Outside, Vernon's rage was palpable. Kill them all. I don't care about the old woman. Kill everyone else. The assault intensified. Men charged from 3 sides simultaneously. Jake's revolver clicked empty. He grabbed the shotgun, fired both barrels into the massive attackers. Bodies fell, but more kept coming. Naiche was out of arrows. He drew his knife, his face set in grim determination. Inside, Eleanor worked with practiced efficiency. Push, dear. That's it. Push, Clara screamed, a sound of agony and effort that tore through the chaos of battle. Jake heard that scream, and something broke inside him. He charged out onto the porch with nothing but his empty gun and 3 years of accumulated rage. Swung it like a club, connecting with a man's jaw. Felt bones crack. Grabbed a fallen rifle, fired point blank into another attacker. Naiche fought beside him, knife flashing in the morning sun. 2 men down, 3. But Naiche was slowing. Blood loss making him unsteady. Then Jake saw movement from the corner of his eye. Vernon Whitmore, dismounted, circling around to the back of the cabin, heading for the door while everyone was distracted. Naiche Vernon's. But Naiche was already moving, limping toward the back door as fast as his wounded leg would carry him. Inside, Eleanor said urgently, One more push. Clara, one more and your baby's here. The back door crashed open. Vernon stood silhouetted against the morning light, a pistol in his hand. His cultured facade finally cracked to reveal the monster beneath. Hello, niece. His smile was poisonous. 15 years I've invested in you, feeding you, clothing you, preparing you. You were supposed to make me rich. Instead, you've cost me everything. He raised the gun, aimed at Clara's chest. Naiche hit him from the side like a charging bull. They crashed through the doorway, rolling in the dirt, grappling for the weapon. The gun fired once, twice. Naiche staggered back, 2 red flowers blooming on his chest. He looked down at the wounds with something like surprise, then looked at Vernon with absolute hatred. Jake burst through the front door, saw Vernon raising the gun for a 3rd shot, saw Naiche falling. Time seemed to slow. His hand found the knife at his belt, Naiche's knife, given to him months ago. He threw it with all the skill the Apache had taught him. The blade buried itself in Vernon's throat. Vernon's eyes went wide. He dropped the gun, clutched at the knife, blood pouring between his fingers. He tried to speak, managed only a wet gurgle, then collapsed. Jake caught Naiche as he fell, lowered him gently to the ground. Blood soaked through the Apache's shirt, too much blood, pumping with each heartbeat. No, Jake said. No, you're not. I forgave you, Naiche whispered. The day I met you, I forgave him too. He coughed, red staining his lips. My brother would want me to save her, not hate you. Don't talk. We'll get help. You're the brother I chose. Naiche's hand found Jake's. Tell Clara. She's free now. Tell my people. I died protecting family. Inside the cabin, a baby's cry pierced the morning air. Thin, outraged, perfectly alive. Naiche smiled. His eyes drifted toward the sound, and something like peace settled over his features. "Life defeats death," he murmured. Then he was gone. Jake held him. This man who'd had every reason to kill him, but chose mercy instead. This man who'd shown him what family really meant. This man who'd sacrificed everything so that Clara and her baby could live. The sun broke over the horizon, painting the desert gold and red. The shooting had stopped. Vernon's men, seeing their employer dead, were fleeing into the morning. Sheriff Cooper sat on the ground, hands raised in surrender as riders approached from the east. Ford Apache cavalry, 20 soldiers, arriving far too late. The commander dismounted, took in the scene, the bodies, the blood, the weeping man holding a dead Apache. "We got word of an illegal execution order," the commander said. "Sheriff Cooper's been under investigation for corruption. We came as fast as we could." "You're too late," Jake said flatly. "The good man's already dead." Inside, Clara held her baby against her chest, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor wrapped the infant in clean cloth, her movements tender despite her normally stern demeanor. "It's a girl," Eleanor said softly. "Perfect and healthy." Clara looked toward the door, where Jake still held Naiche's body. She understood before anyone spoke. The weight of Jake's grief told her everything. "Bring him inside," she said. "Let him meet her, please." Jake carried Naiche's body into the cabin, laid him gently on the floor near Clara. She reached down with one hand, placed it on Naiche's cooling forehead. "Her name is Hope," Clara said through her tears. "Hope Naiche Morrison, so everyone will know. So no one will forget." The baby Hope wailed her protest at the unfairness of entering a world where good men died and evil men prospered. But she was alive. Clara was alive, and Naiche's sacrifice had made that possible. Sheriff Cooper was arrested, dragged away still protesting his innocence. Vernon's body was loaded onto a wagon. The cavalry commander took statements, collected evidence, promised full investigations. But none of it mattered to Jake. He sat beside Naiche's body as morning turned to afternoon, one hand on his friend's chest, tears falling silent and endless. Eleanor stayed, helping Clara, cleaning the baby, preparing food no one would eat. She said nothing about her earlier judgment, her previous cruelty. Some things didn't need words. As sunset approached, Jake finally spoke. "He taught me how to live again, how to forgive myself, how to be family." His voice broke. And I never told him what it meant. Never said thank you. "He knew?" Clara said softly, hope sleeping against her chest. "He knew." "Jake." The desert wind whispered through the ruins of their home, carrying the scent of rain that never came. 3 had stood together. Now they were 2, plus a child born in blood and sacrifice. Hope Naiche Morrison slept on, innocent of the price paid for her life. But one day, Clara would tell her. One day, she'd know about the Apache warrior who died so she could live. About the family forged in fire, about love that transcended blood and chose sacrifice over survival. For now, there was only grief, only loss, only the unbearable weight of surviving when the best among them had fallen. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky the color of blood and hope, and in the gathering darkness, Jake Morrison held vigil over his brother, not born to him, but chosen. And that, He finally understood. Made all the difference. Sometimes the family we choose means more than the one we're born into. Jake Morrison learned this truth the hard way, standing over the grave of a man who had every reason to hate him but chose mercy instead. Naiche could have taken revenge for his brother's death, but he chose forgiveness. Clara could have surrendered to the cruelty that defined her early years, but she chose hope. Together, they proved that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about building a future despite it. 3 months after that terrible dawn, Jake and Clara still work the rebuilt ranch, raising Hope Neach Morrison to know her namesake's story. The town of Red Mesa learned that courage looks like an elderly widow walking through gunfire to deliver a baby, like a disgraced lawman finding his badge again, like an Apache warrior choosing sacrifice over hatred. We all carry ghosts. We all need second chances. The question is, what will we do with ours? Real strength isn't about never falling. It's about who you become after you hit the ground. It's about the people who refuse to let you stay down. That's what family does. That's what love means. What would you sacrifice for the people you call family? Have you ever been given a second chance that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.